Yes. I didn't say.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this is a very important moment to eulogize the fallen third President of the Republic of Kenya, President Emilio Stanley Mwai Kibaki. And I start by reading a quote that is very famously attributed to him. The leadership is a privilege to better the lives of others. It is not an opportunity to satisfy personal greed. Another quote that is associated with our fallen president is that when he faced a challenge in the 1988 Kano nominations, he still won, but he said that even rigging has manners. And Madam Speaker, the shambolism that is associated with party nominations has been rampant across the political divide, and it has been used to deny the country of great leadership or people who have contrary opinion as and when this happens, and especially because even the turnout is usually very low to the detriment of good leadership. And I think at times, going by his assertion about leadership and rigging, is that then you've got to make a covenant with the devil. If you decide to rig yourself into power, and as it has been said before, political corruption is the mother of all corruption. That is the malaise that has affected our leadership in this country, to the extent that then we've not really gotten the dividend of our democratic engagement. Okay. I want to say, Madam Speaker, that personally, I stand here very happy because the fallen president, and you can hear the trumpets of the brass band as his body is being escorted out of Parliament, is that the president came to power on a wheelchair. This is very, very significant. He had gotten an accident, and he ended up being on a wheelchair as a result. And it's out of this, Madam Speaker, that President Mwai Kibaki promulgated the Persons with Disabilities Act number 14 of 2003 into law. That was a watershed because it enabled persons with disabilities whose bill had actually been in limbo in this Parliament for 10 years, since 1993, to see light of day. And it is actually out of that I myself, in 2004, under the leadership of my colleague, Senator George Ochilo Opondo Ayako, George Mbogo, I was appointed to sit in the first board of the National Council for Persons with Disabilities, a body that was created to superintend over the affairs of people with disabilities by ensuring the implementation of the very law that created that body. So yes, I am a direct beneficiary of the leadership of President Mwai Kibaki in 2004. But earlier on also, it was quite interesting because there was a very serious scheme to deny him to become president. Because when I first registered as a voter in 2002, I couldn't vote for President Kibaki. The reason is many names that started with O and M had been omitted in the voter register. And even at some point, I think Raila Odinga's name was missing at Olympic Primary School, if I remember, in 2002, December 29th. But be that as it may, he still went ahead and won resoundingly with over 2 million votes at 63% of the vote. And that is how he was declared president, Yote Yawezekana, under the NAC banner. It should be remembered that President Mwai Kibaki kind of became a president by accident. He had tried to become president in 1992. He became, a good number 3, although in politics there's no number 2 or 3. In 1997, he became number 2, and then eventually he was a president of consensus because the then opposition formed the National Alliance Party of Kenya, NA, in bracket PK, and it was a constituent party of DP, the Democratic Party, a party that he founded, NAC, SDP, I beg your pardon, and such other parties that came together. And later on, they were joined by LDP, led by the then KANU renegades, under the leadership of Raila Odinga and others like George Saitoti, may so rest in peace, Kalonzo Musyoka, and others. So he really got into power, and there was a lot of hope. Over 500,000 people, thronged Uhuru Park to see his swearing in. And there was a lot of desire to change this country. Indeed, I remember, as a young university student that time, there was a lot of hopelessness in this country. The economy was in the doldrums. And I remember knocking the doors of Parliament there, the Continental House, bringing my friend Martin Obiero Okumu to see his then Member of Parliament, the late Archbishop Ondieki, who had replaced our senior James Orengo as a member for Ugenya, because Martin Obiero Okumu, a blind man, I was his guide, was looking for school fees. And we were chased very badly at the gates there. We couldn't be allowed to be close to Parliament at that time. But it was good because we learned our lessons, although we went through college. Again, the benefits of a Kibaki government were again to have a direct impact on me, because student leadership was banned in all public universities, Madam Speaker. I remember at that time we could have been at the university as a vice chancellor in Mwai. And when it was reinstated, I happened to have been elected as a student leader at Kenyatta University, one out of the 7 student leaders at the Kenyatta University Student Association, together with my dear sister, Gladys Wanga, the incoming governor of Homa Bay. So it was really that, gesture that those who had clamored for reforms at the university level, that they got an opportunity to exercise leadership under the new democratic dawn that the NAC administration, birthed, of course, under the leadership of President Mwai Kibaki. And I remember we led a protest against the then Vice Chancellor, George Eshuani, may so rest in peace. And it's out of that that also President Kibaki gave us a new Vice Chancellor, Professor Everett Maraka Standa, the poet, who, of course, ended up governing the university in a better way. So I am here standing as a direct beneficiary of President Mwai Kibaki's leadership. And further to it, I remember, with a lot of nostalgia, that there was a boom of the economy. So much so that many of my colleagues who finished school with us were able to get jobs within their first year, that they did not tarmac for long, because the banks who were employing, they were hooking loans, there are so many businesses, credit was available, and it is that inspiration. In fact, I was speaking to Jimmy Kibaki, the son, this morning as I went to view, after I viewed the body, that is the inspiration of the Kenya Kwanza, the UDA, a bottom-up economic model. That you can actually stimulate the economy from the bottom up and create many opportunities for so many millions of people. And it is very, very well documented in terms of macroeconomics. That's the only way you can ensure a country has been able to rise again. But if you have a very constricted economy, with very few people at the top, I think it's very, very, very serious that then you create a lot of poverty. And I've just come from a very fractious and engaging, grueling campaign process, and the levels of poverty that have been created in the last 10 years, it's horrible. It's horrible, Madam Speaker. We have actually regulated so many people in the doldrums of poverty. And that is not what our government should do. It's a total failure. When President Kibaki left office, he left the country with a public debt of 1.8 trillion because he borrowed very well every year about 200 billion for infrastructure projects. And at that point in time, the economy was financed locally, domestically, at 93% of the GDP. We were only borrowing about 6%. Today, all of our development budget is borrowed because of poor fiscal economic strategy. When he was there in power, I remember as a young, public servant, at a very young age of 22 years, having gotten my first government appointment, we used to practice what you call the medium-term expenditure framework. This was a 3-year budgeting cycle so that you would know your resource envelope 3 years in advance in terms of it was incremental. Today, it's yearly, and about 8,000 government projects have yet to be implemented. because they are whimsical. And I remember the president saying, when he took over power in 2003, that the country shall not be led under the whims of an individual. He believed in the rule of law. And as a result, Madam Speaker, he promulgated the new constitution in 2010. He never felt the embarrassment as to the loss in 2005 no referendum, that he lost actually to his erstwhile political nemesis in government and allies, led by Raila Odinga. He still kept the fire burning. And it is actually rumored and documented, actually, he was ready to relinquish power because he was a Democrat in 2007 until some forces prevailed upon him. And of course, there was the Grand Coalition government. But even then, he was very witty, an intelligent man, because when he constituted his first cabinet, he only appointed 17 members of the cabinet, I can remember very well, and left the other 17 to the then opposition. Even if the cabinet later on was, increased to 42 odd members, so that then we could be able to have ODM and PNU coalition, get into power. He's a president who never really, glorified himself. He removed his face from the currency even before this current constitution so provided. The only currency that bears his portrait is a 40 bob, coin, just because it was a new one. But otherwise, he refused to have himself named after every other thing that he launched. And for that, we remain grateful to him. In fact, even as recently as I think 1 or 2 years ago, he was approached to have the Odaya Referral Hospital named after him, but he actually recommended it be named Kenyatta National Hospital Annex. That's a great man. I think all of us would run at the slightest opportunity to name anything after ourselves because we feel that is the only way we can be remembered. So President Mwai Kibaki, the great economist, the great orator, who I think in 1982 was named in the Times magazine as one of the 100 greatest leaders. For sure, he lived up to this expectation. At some point, of course, people are disillusioned with his leadership because maybe in the way in which he spoke. I think he was very intelligent because people may have taken him for a fool because of the manner he presented himself in public, but that made him to survive the longest. He survived many people. At some point, he was called a perennial fence-eater. In fact, he was called a general Kigwea, but he finished last and he finished strong. I am happy that if you look at the biblical years of 70 years, he actually became president at the age of 72. And so therefore, he has lived his life to the full at the age of 90, almost 91, to see to it even that his successors, almost at the tail end of his successor, President Uhuru Kenyatta, who he also happened to have had the privilege of being his godfather upon his baptism. So President Mwai Kibaki then was a star, because that is to mean the first President Jomo Kenyatta must have identified that he had a great future as to occasion a situation where he would be the godfather of his own son. So this is a great man from the word go. Not a typical politician per se. He borders on the academic, Madam Professor Speaker, because you see he was plucked from Makerere University. In fact, very interestingly, Jaramogi Oginga Odinga was impressed by the manifesto of the then ruling party under Milton Obote in Uganda. And he asked, you have a very good manifesto. He said, actually, it's not us who did it. There's a young Kenyan in Makerere who did it. It happened to be Mwai Kibaki. So Mwai Kibaki is the one who had actually made the manifesto of the then ruling party, for Milton Obote's government. And that is how Jaramogi Oginga, I beg your pardon, was able to invite him to become the executive officer of the then KANU party, and he rose to become, an executive officer stroke permanent secretary, and he rose from there up. He's a man we can see who was able to change with the times. When he couldn't secure Donholm, Bahati that time, he moved to Nyeri, and he formed his base very well. When he couldn't take it in, I think he still stayed there and waited for the opportune moment to start his DP party. I can imagine the embarrassment he went through when he had to be dropped as the vice president, and he was still retained in cabinet as Minister for Health. It must have been a very trying moment. He stayed for 10 good years in the opposition. I wonder whether he would have become a good president, Madam Speaker, had he not stayed in the opposition for those 10 good years. I think it's a question of seasoning. So that then, by the time he became president, then he knew the suffering of Kenyans, because if you live in this bubble of leadership after leadership, you may actually be bereft of the realities of the people that you want to lead. So I think he was meant for the moment. I'm afraid under the Jubilee administration that I have campaigned very seriously for, we've rolled back the economic gains that he had made. If we had continued with that legacy, we've actually we've eaten it off, and we are about 15 years back where we were before. Yes, indeed, there is a question of whether the issue of devolution and an expanded government, the 2 tiers of government, then is a reason. I beg to differ, because I remember President Kibaki struggling with the new governors led by Alfred Mutua and others who were then vocal, by him insisting that we are a unitary government. It's only that in the expansionist and building behavior of public servants, we didn't scale down what had been devolved as to occasion a reduction of government expenditure at the national level. Why, for example, today would 98 billion be used at the national headquarters of the Ministry of actually opened up with public universities to in a very big way. And it's out of that we have had so many people graduate. The quality may be arguable, but at least today, so many people have gotten degrees that they would not have otherwise gotten. So he was very futuristic in terms of education. And as someone may have said earlier on, Kimani Maruge, an 84-year-old man, showed up in school. In fact, Bill Clinton, former president of America, when he was asked who he wanted to meet, he said, I want to meet Mwai Kibaki. Because when he became president, he actually provided free education, and 1 million children showed up in classroom, in school. And he came all the way from America to come and have a chat with President Mwai Kibaki. I also remember him being hosted in Washington by the then President George Bush. It was very, very important that the Democratic Party leader was an icon of democracy. Is a man that even if we look at the current celebrations, they are not overrated and are being outdone like the way it has been done before on other people. And that in itself, that mien, that quiet, demeanor is very, very important. I was speaking to Jimmy Kibaki today, and he told me that it is the first time that he's stepping in Parliament today, for the first time, this time, because even when his father had served here for 10 terms, 50 years, he never allowed public service to be mixed with family. And that's the reason why that even he stayed at State House, so that he could have more time with his family, and so that grandchildren could visit him. So he separated family and public office, something that maybe some of us are not very good at doing. And it's a lesson that we may want to learn from him, so there's some form of stability going forward. So, Madam Speaker, I stand here tall, happy that we have a role model that we can look up to, someone who put the country first, and he was paid for it. The journey was arduous, it was treacherous. He had to really wait for so long to become president. He was bypassed by so many people who looked better and good than him, but still, the hand of God still made sure that he became the best president that I can say confidently here, out of the 4 presidents, he shines, he stands tall, he's a man who really, should be emulated. I want to end by a story that I read, a friend of mine was telling me about, that he was a policeman at State House, but he had taken a whole night watching football and he was fatigued. And he decided to sleep in a banana plantation at State House, one of the quarters, because it's a big piece of land. And then when he was sleeping, he only woke up when somebody tapped on him, only to find the commander-in-chief was asking, where unajificha hapa? And they had a very good conversation, but he still let him to go and asked him, are you happy because I have increased the salary for the policemen? He made a lot of police reforms. And finally, Madam Speaker, the 2010 Constitution that he promulgated, that has mentioned persons with disabilities 18 times, is the same Constitution that has enabled me to stand here today, first in the 11th Parliament as a nominated member of the National Assembly, and today as a nominated senator. It is the same Constitution, when I was being illegally removed from the Senate, that defended me under the rule of law, and after 7 months I was able to come back to finish my term. I thank God for President Emilio Stanley Mwai Kibaki, a great man who lived in this country. May his soul rest in eternal peace. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Honorable Senators, we still have 5 members and we have slightly less than an hour. I'm just saying that because there was no limitation that was given at the beginning, so we cannot start limitation now. But I want you to be conscious so that you be fair to one another. Senator Halaga of Shiro Soka.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to eulogize our third president, President Emilio Mwai Kibaki. And as we grieve for our third president, His Excellency Emilio Mwai Kibaki, we should honor his memory and celebrate his life, which life is really rich in family, but more importantly, even rich in achievements. His towering achievements, Madam Speaker, have been spoken about by everybody here in this House. But for some of us that come from northern Kenya, I think if we were to list some of the things that the third president achieved, would be so proud as to say that he linked us to Kenya proper. How did he link us to Kenya proper? There was a time that beyond Isiolo, which is my county, you could not really come beyond Isiolo going towards Marsabit County. There were no roads at all. But during Kibaki's tenure as the third president of the Republic of Kenya, he connected the Great North to what we had previously called ourselves not Kenyans proper. So we honor his life, we honor his legacy of towering achievements that has been said by all of the colleagues, from education, free primary education, to expanded higher education, to great infrastructural developments that today our economy runs on, to a lot of other things that he did in this country. We celebrate his life. And as I said, it's a life really that boasts of towering achievement. Madam Speaker, the grief of any person is felt most by the family. But a country constitutes a larger extended family too. So we also as Kenyans grieve for the loss of our third president, but we are more in celebration because of the kind of leadership he showed us, a leadership that lived within its means. And that is why everybody who stood up to speak today spoke of him having not borrowed or having borrowed and used it wisely. He believed that every citizen, including himself, must live within their means. And that showed very clearly in his legacy as a president that had the least debt, so to speak. And at the same time, the towering achievements that he achieved were then investments that were made very prudently, very cautiously, and with priority and focused strategic direction. Madam Speaker, our president had a distinguished career, as had been mentioned, of 50 years from 1963 all the way to 2013. Leadership is given by God. Therefore, as they'd say in the Quran and in the Bible, that he is an anointed one, in the sense that you cannot have somebody lead for so many years. It's not to say that he's not had challenges or shortcomings, but he has led this country and has served and had the privilege of serving this country in very many capacities, in all of which he excelled. Madam Speaker, when our third president did not expect results from what he knew, he expected results from what he did. Because one of the things we make a mistake of, and especially those of us that are younger make a mistake, we think we know a lot, we studied a lot, and we expect the knowledge we have to give us achievements and results. But leadership is action. And he believed in action. He actioned. He made roads, he made schools, he gave free primary education, he promulgated a new constitution. He did all these things because he knew that you don't get results from just what you know. And boy, he knew a lot. He was so smart. He's an economist. He, as you were told, that he's the person that was behind some of the manifestos in Africa that were really one of the best at the time. But he actioned, and he practiced leadership as action. And for that, what a great mentor he has been for the youth of this country. Personally, I've had the privilege of working for the president as a youth. When he conceived the Youth Enterprise Development Fund, he didn't give to old people to execute it. He gave it to the young people, myself included, to go and put meat to it. We sat down, we didn't have an office, we sat down and created what today is a Youth Enterprise Development Fund. And when we brought to him with a very small amount, because in our little minds we thought 300 million is a lot of money, or 1 billion is a lot of money, and he said, what kind of money is that? I quickly, in fact, said, we can reduce it to 200 million, because in my mind then, that was a lot of money. He said nobody would take you seriously. He doubled that money, gave 2 billion shillings, and in the 3 years to follow, it became 5 billion shillings. And on top of that, the Youth Enterprise Development Fund, that was conceived by His Excellency, our third president, and given to the young people of this country to actually execute it, which the Women Development Fund, the Ways of Fund were developed. In fact, when I read the documents, I can speak out sentences that we contributed as the youth of this country and as the first board members. Of course, we quit because at the time we felt like we were used to put in place a very, very robust system that was going to then provide people to steal, and we didn't want to be part of that. And looking back, we should have stayed and fought. But that having been said, he put his words where his thoughts were. He didn't just conceive something and give it to the older people to do. He conceived it and gave it to the young people to do it. And for that, we're very proud. It was our first experience with government, and of which we're very proud, and of which we continue to be proud and to show the results we've achieved for this country during his tenure. Madam Speaker, he saw that the people behind the labels. At the time, the youth were called Mungiki, the youth time bomb, the youth this and the youth that. He actioned. He put the Youth Enterprise Development Fund, which to date continues to fund some of these things. His principle stands on a lot of things, be it living within your means, be it zero tolerance to corruption, be it not entertaining certain things, or be it actually asking people to take responsibility for their lives. Today, as we go campaigning, we come face to face with people who don't take responsibility for their lives. They probably think that politicians should take care of their lives. But President Mwai Kibaki had such a principled stance against any of these things. He would say, yes, serikali itasaidia, but within the environment within which you work for yourself. That is the mentorship. That is the direction that a leader should give, and he gave it very well. Madam Speaker, we that come from northern Kenya, when we talk of the great north, the big, bold north, which is a dream for most of us who would like to go into leadership to achieve that dream, we will be walking on the great road that His Excellency Mwai Kibaki made. For those and many other things that he has made, and he just quietly achieved them. You would never hear him chest thumping. Right now I've heard people saying that the Jubilee government has brought very bad things. They have done so many things. They have borrowed too much. The Jubilee government, in my mind, the Jubilee government is Uhuru Ruto. We campaigned for Uhuru Ruto. It is not just Uhuru alone. So if there's any responsibility, the two should take responsibility for it, and nobody should apportion blame and take credit at the same time. That cannot be. And so even as we eulogize our third president, who has, as I said, who has created a lot of, who has achieved quite a lot, and who has, in the last 50 years of his service to humanity and his service to the country, has the privilege of public service, but he did justice to it. Because today's public service is a shadow of what it should be. Public service that's supposed to be compassionate, public service that's supposed to really be capable, that is supposed to put in place the capable people, is nothing close to that. we are relying on other measures of public service. But he embodied the public service that is a privilege to serve, the public service that should be delivered with compassion, the public service that should be given to capable people to achieve great things, the public service that believes in action, that achieves results for the most vulnerable of this society. Madam Speaker, as one of the people that achieved the Millennium Development Goal for universal access to education, and is at the primary level, we celebrate our president. We celebrate this country for producing such an outstanding leader. Because right now, with the failure of nerve of leadership, with the crisis of leadership that we experience, today I hope his death and his legacy that is now been revived in his death will remind us as we aspire to leadership that we should emulate him. We should walk in his giant feet. Madam Speaker, I know a lot of my colleagues were saying they don't aspire to be president and therefore are asking other people aspiring to be president. Those of us, I cannot rule out aspiring to be a president because I'm following in the footsteps. If we have that canvas, if we have that rubric that has been provided to us by our forefathers, President Kenyatta, President Daniel Arap Moi, President Mwai Kibaki, all of whom have shown us what public service should look like, what selfless service should look like. And therefore, without belaboring too much and without repeating all the good things that have been said, I would like to, on behalf of the people of Isiolo, whose voice we in Parliament are, on behalf of my own family, whose voice we are, on behalf of the people of the Great North, where I come from, I would like to say pole sana to our third president and his family, and look forward to the people of Kenya, because his death is coming at a very opportune time for us to make sure that we emulate him, and that we, as we aspire to greater office, to walk in his footpath, and to then serve this country with diligence, with compassion, with all the capabilities that we have, but more importantly, with love. Rest in peace, our third president, and may God continue to bless this country. Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Milgo, Alice.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for this chance